Hey, good afternoon. It's Mark Schultz here with DigitalAircraft. And today we talk about air traffic management again. We talk about that very unique challenge that we have in the industry today, where it's very exciting. We have growing uncrewed traffic. We have drones, we have UAVs, we have eVTOLs, and it's expected when we talk to our guest on Friday, who was also an expert in this area, he said that we should see about a tenfold increase in the near future on this kind of traffic out there in the industry. And so whereas today we have a safe air traffic system, the challenge is that there's no way that it can handle the capacity of 10 times growth in a very short period of time. So today we talk about blockchain and aviation and how it relates to air traffic management. So I'm going to be bringing in a guest here today who's an expert in this area, and we're going to have this conversation. Let me just go ahead and jump right in and bring him in. I have with us today Matt Banham. Matt, how are you today?
Yeah, good. Hello, everyone. Yeah, good to see you all.
Excellent. Hey, where are you located today?
We're located in a very, very sunny Bath today. I just checked out the window. Yeah, it's still very, very sunny. Bath in the United Kingdom.
Fantastic. Well, I'm glad to have you with us here today. Hey, just to get us kicked off here, can you tell everybody who you are and what do you do?
Yeah, sure. So I am Matt Banham. I am the CTO and founder of a small to medium enterprise called TEKTowr. We are an engineering solutions house that predominantly deals in pretty much anything that moves. So cars, planes, trains, and we've been working predominantly in the aerospace, and indeed we've been working in blockchain and aerospace, which is why we're here today.
Excellent. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So Matt, listen, thanks for joining us. And we're going to get into more detail and be talking about how blockchain applies in these areas and in just a couple of minutes. In order to, you guys all watching know that I really like to engage our audience, and it's always exciting to me. And I see I already have a whole bunch of people that have checked in from where they are because they know I'm going to ask this question. You know, I asked people, would you please share this broadcast and also tell me where you're located? And I always like to know where people are watching from. I like to give them a shout out. We already have so many people that have already checked in, Matt. Why don't we take a look at some of them here? We have somebody in West Sussex. Is that far from you? We have Robin Brownsell.
Hi, Robin. I know Robin very well, actually. Yes, good to see you, my friend.
Excellent. And then we have Ismail here joining us from Istanbul. Welcome, Ismail. Glad to have you with us. And let's see, he's saying up twice there. And then we have Abdullah, who's joined us from India. Abdullah, thanks. Matt, it's really exciting that we have people joining us from all around the world. Isn't it amazing that we can do a broadcast and we can connect with people in all corners of the earth, like this? It's just really amazing.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Really fantastic. And then we have Sudarsan. I wish I could pronounce your name better. Thank you for joining here with us today. We have Robin Brownsell. I guess he already checked in up there earlier. And then we have Steve Suttles, who's here in the United States, checking in from Texas from MD Helicopters. And hey, listen, for the rest of you that are watching out there, just drop a comment in the box here and I'll give you a shout out. We just really like to know where you're watching from and who our audience is and just who's watching, who's paying attention, to what's going on. And if you'd also help us out and share this broadcast. Hey, Matt, I wanted to tell everybody watching is last week we had about 14,000 viewers of the broadcast, so we had a really good week. And, so far, I think we've had close to 45 or 50,000 viewers. So one thing we know is that people are interested in what you're going to have to say today. That's for certain.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's just so great to be involved, just to see so much interest in this area of aerospace and in blockchain indeed, and for these new vehicles and the new entrants to the market. Yeah. It's very, very exciting time in our industry.
Let's jump right in because I know people are very interested and they want to hear what you have to say. And so why don't we just start out by telling everybody, just so they know who you are, what is the company you work for, TEKTowr? What do they do?
Yeah, so TEKTowr, we produce what we call it engineering solutions, but we're a mixture of services and products. So, for instance, companies come to us with particular problems, and being an engineering company, we look for ways in which it's solved. Now, predominantly that's within safety critical and security critical, because that's predominantly my background. So, when you start a company, you pretty much pull in quite a bit of your existing network, and you start reaching out to your wider network. But we also, off the back of that, we always said that when we started TEKTowr, we would build a product company. So a company that finds companies who have problems, but actually go and research products which will solve their problems. And off the back of that, we've actually developed 2 products. One of which is basically an augmented reality, virtual reality of airspace design tool called SimTwin, which is dedicated for these new entrants to the market, for the new uncrewed electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicles, to really answer the real questions about is the airspace safe? What do we need to make it safe? Can we get separation of aircraft? And then
safety and the growth of that space is really going to be important. And so, I think we're going to have to dig in deeper on that in just a second. Let me just come back to maybe so people can get to know you a little bit better. Could you tell us a little bit about sort of your background and your journey? Because I know people always want to know sort of where people come from. They want to know you're just not some random guy. They want to know sort of who you are and what do you do, all right? So what's your background? So just tell us a little bit about where you came from and kind of your journey and where you got to where you are today.
Yeah, no worries, Mark. Yeah, I mean, sometimes I do feel like I've had a bit of a random journey, actually. All those memes and those T-shirts, which is, embrace the wiggle, if you like. It's not a straight line. I think really do sum me up. So I have a background in physics, predominantly optical physics. So I graduated from Nottingham University here, and I worked in optical switches, optical fiber. Worked in a couple of startups. But then and helped design the world's lowest loss hollow core optical fiber, which was really great. But the company that did that, they sold on to Finland, and I'd moved to Bath at this point, and I'd fallen in love with Bath. Also fallen in love with my now wife, and decided to stay in Bath. And if anyone knows Bath and Bristol around this area, this is aerospace central for the UK. And there's lots of aerospace companies and lots of people doing safety critical here. And so a friend of mine said, well, look, why don't you come and just work as a lowly algorithm developer for what was Praxis High Integrity Systems at the time. And they had a system they were developing called IFACTS, which was the predominant system that was going to handle all 9,000 flights per day for the UK. Providing separation management, medium-term conflict detection, making sure metal doesn't hit metal, basically, and allowing the air traffic controllers to enter clearances, do flight path monitoring, monitor where the flights are, and actually make the airspace safe. So I did that for a while. I rose up through the ranks and eventually got in charge of what was 150 engineers as the technical authority on the project, and help deliver it into service on time, on budget, with all the safety critical assurance signed off for the 2012 Olympics. And it had to work. It was a must not fail, because the controllers were reaching capacity. And so this would allow the capacity savings, if you like, and the efficiency savings, so that we could actually get the flights into London for the Olympics.
So Matt, but before you keep going, tell us what exactly did the application do? So I'm trying to make certain people understand sort of what your area of expertise was. What did it build upon? So what did
so I think the easiest way the easiest way of describing it is probably take the day in the life of a flight. It's probably the easiest way. So if you think about a flight takes off, and it takes off from an airport, and what it's going to do, it's going to take off, climb, and then it needs to go through a series of sectors, along its route in order to get to its destination. And so all of that needs coordinating. And the other thing is if you think what you need to know as an air traffic controller, you need to know that the flight is going the right way, or if it's not going the right way, you need to know where it is going. If it is going off route, you need to make sure that it's not going to hit anything else. And so you need to be able to predict where it's going, and you need to be able to take action, course correction for it if it's not going the right way. And that's what the application did. That's what IFACTS does. It's basically, so prior to IFACTS, lots of work was done just literally by the air traffic controllers using paper strips on these boards that sound like a typewriter when they're shuffling them, because they shuffle them
All right. So,
into
so,
priority
so,
order.
if we kind of look at your experience, then is that I see you have, obviously, in order to be able to be involved in developing that kind of an application, you had to have a very deep understanding, and your people on your team had to have a very
Yeah.
deep understanding of operations, right?
Yeah. Well, you sort you don't start off that way, but you do rapidly get it. And actually, working with pilots and air traffic controllers, you get that knowledge pretty quickly. And also, I think the other thing is being a physicist. So I've I sort of did that predominantly, but I also pulled in experience from, like, for instance, I designed a carbon sequestration power station, and actually, you pull in experience from this. I think I've done radar solutions. I've done all manner of things, mobile telecom solutions. So again, comms is an important part.
Mm.
You sort of bring all of that experience to bear on what is a very critical area. And
So
then
you kind of
finally,
have this background of looking at, problems and challenges, and looking at technology, and finding out how you can develop a solution for it. That's what I'm kind of hearing you,
yeah,
saying.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And because of the nature of the work, and I have to say that the people we were working with were they were excellent people, both on for the National Air Traffic Service, but also for the team that I was working with. And we've got now somewhere in the region of 6.5, 7 million run hours, and not a single failure, barely a warning. And that's the thing with safety critical is we design things so they cannot fail.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank
Congratulations.
you. Yeah.
Hey, listen, I want to keep going in this conversation, but I always like to engage people in the audience. And we have another guest here. We have Simon Barker, who actually is from Aerospace Tech Review. Great magazine. You guys should check it out sometime. And then we just have a comment from Abdullah. He said 9,000 flights, fantastic work. I like to know that people are actually listening. And then we have some Latin American visitors here today. We have Juan Carlos Lozano. Thanks for joining from Colombia. I really appreciate that. If anybody else out there is watching, which I know there is, people are just shy. They don't want to put their names in. I'm happy to give you a shout out. So let me just ask this question, Matt, as we sort of transition, is that you are obviously have a background in operations and IT, and you're used to looking at challenges and problems, and what are the IT solutions that we might be able to apply to it. How in the world did you get engaged in blockchain? Can we shift over to that piece of it?
Yeah, sure. So it is a funny story. So and it involves your guest on Fridays, Simon Brown, basically. What happened was as we completed IFACs, I then that sort of launched a bit of a consulting career for a while. So I went into, as I say, all sorts, from mobile payments to radar solutions to just as a gigging CTO, gigging systems and software engineer, really. Holographic radar, that was a great one, actually. I quite enjoyed that. But then what happened is there came a decision point when I got to about 42. Me and my wife, we've got 4 kids, and I was starting to get itchy to do something different. And a large multinational offered me their CTO slot, and I turned them down. I turned them down 3 times, and I couldn't understand why. And I realized it's because I'd been in 5 startups prior to this, and I thought, do you know what? I fancy a crack at doing one myself. And what happened was, so I was thinking about starting TEKTowr. Now, meanwhile, Simon was starting to talk about blockchain and blockchain for aviation.
Simon Brown, who we had on a Friday.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and well, there's a program called the Single European Skies that is very much looking at a centralized model of flight management and flight data management, but they haven't solved all the problems, and it's been going for quite some time. But I was quite embedded in CESAR, in Single European Skies, or CESAR as it's called, culture. So Simon put something on LinkedIn and basically really bigged up blockchain. And I was like, oh yeah, hype, blah blah blah. It's really hype. It will never work. CESAR's already too far, etc. And he phoned me up. that he says, right, well, I know Matt's quite smart, so he phoned me up, and we had the conversation, and this led to like a 3 to 6 month debate about the merits of blockchain. And what convinced me more than anything is aerospace and aviation has always had a federated authority model. And this is really what it comes down to, is if I look now at what programs like CESAR are doing, which are very laudable, don't get me wrong, but they are trying to come at it from a centralized point of view. So that means, you know, if you think about how the internet is organized, you ultimately have these root certification authorities who are underpinning, you know, who are the certification authority that you can trust, in inverted commas, and you have to just trust them. And so now you need to get bridging agreements between these authorities in different states. So for instance, how do I get a flight that's flying through Russia, dare I say it, North Korea, through Europe into the US, and make sure that that flight is trusted? It becomes incredibly hard to get, say, Russia's root certificate authority to trust that in Europe and that in the US. Whereas blockchain has a federated model from the outset. So the question then is, can we implement something that's better than what we've got today?
So one of the couple of challenges that I've heard you talk about so far here in our broadcast are, number one, we have a significant growth in traffic as a result of uncrewed vehicles. Okay, and number two, you're saying we have this need to continue to provide trust authorities. And when you talk about a trust authority, just really quickly, just explain in your mind what do you mean by that when you're saying that you have these entities that need trust? What does that mean?
Yeah. So I think just before I come on to it, I think it's worth saying, you know, to give you an idea of the scale, or the scale. Okay, IFAC's handled 9,000 flights per day. We're already predicting, you know, that there was a report, the PwC report in the UK as part of the future flight work. They're predicting 76,000 of these vehicles in the sky.
So 9 to 10 times the amount of traffic. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me just pause real quick. Since you brought that up, I'm going to ask the question: is that can the current traffic system handle that kind of volume?
I think it would really struggle, basically. And I think there's two reasons why. There's a number of reasons why, but there's two predominant ones. Number one is there's a definite need to revise how we do communication with that many number of flights, in order that you can get the bandwidth and the scalability of the airspace. The existing systems we have right now simply will not work. And then number two is the autonomy. The systems we have in how we coordinate aircraft. You know, I think there's lots of people that are saying, well, you're going to have to still have manual human in the loop control of this. And I think you certainly will need humans in the loop. Absolutely, of course. But unless you introduce a greater levels of autonomy into the airspace, I think you're going to really struggle to get 76,000 flights to all be manually coordinated through technical specialists, if you like.
If we might just add to that, is it just to kind of put a little bit of that in perspective? Is it let me add just a little example that just comes to my mind as I'm thinking here right now. Is that okay? So I'm a pilot. I started flying when I was like 15 years old. And when I started flying, we had VOR and ILSs, but we were still learning on non-directional beacon, kind of approaches. So you had an NDB, and basically you honed in on it and you navigated, off of a signal that was coming off with no directions on it, non-directional beacon, all right? And then we had instrument landing systems, and we had VORs, and we had Vortex, and we had things like that. And then all of a sudden, this was like in the 90s, I think, if I remember what it was. I was working at Jeppesen at the time. For those of you that don't know Jeppesen, navigation charts and maps. And somebody said, we're going to start using RNAV. And people are like, RNAV, you can't go from point to point. That's just not possible. You can't go directly between navigational aids. You have to follow the airways, all right? And so at different points in time in history, we've had advancements in technology, and we've had things happen which allowed us to increase the traffic safely and to be able to manage it more efficiently. Now, do you envision that the next wave of air traffic management or UTM, uncrewed traffic management, needs the same kind of exponential change in technology to be able to manage these kind of volumes?
Yes, absolutely. I really, really do. And certainly for uncrewed traffic management, absolutely, because it's not just the numbers, it's also the variety. The dynamics of a drone are very different from, say, the dynamics of an eVTOL. And you can't at the minute.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, sure. So for instance, you could just take the speeds of those. So for instance, if you take drones, the expectation is you're going to have a large number of very low speed devices in lower airspace. But then on top of that, they've got to play nicely with these much larger sort of regional aircraft and urban aircraft, such as the electric vertical takeoff landing vehicles, which are kind of, a little bit like a glorified drone, which carry people and cargo, but also a little bit like a helicopter. And some of them actually end up, with the kind of tilt wing ideas, a lot of them end up being a little bit like a tiny Cessna, if you like, a tiny plane. And so the dynamics of those, at first we've got operations which are going to start in corridors, but eventually you're going to get to the point where there's too much traffic for that. So they're going to have to, we're going to have to integrate that airspace and even with existing general aviation aircraft that we have now.
Yeah, Matt, we don't make helicopters at a traditional airport follow the same, airport traffic pattern that a fixed wing aircraft does.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sometimes we manage them, but we let helicopters do what they can do, right?
Yeah.
And so I see what you're saying. And if you have a large number of vehicles which have much different movement patterns, we're going to have to say, how do we handle that? And the air traffic system has to be able to handle that.
Yeah, and you don't know yet what the new concept of operations for this is, but it can't be the same as it's not going to be the same as general aviation, because simply you're not going to accept that style of regulation in lower airspace. But you also know it's not going to be the uncontrolled Wild West feast that we sometimes get at the minute, because you simply cannot have that as the airspace scales up. I mean, right now in the UK, we have somewhere in the region, several 100,000 drone operators, believe it or not. I was shocked as anyone when I saw the figures, just how many. And very soon you're going to get your volocopters and your Liliums, your Supernals, all in that airspace. And the aim is we want them to collaborate, not compete for space in a way.
Well, I guess we can't have 76,000 Piper Cubs with no transponder running around, flying around out there.
That's right.
Space, so.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, listen, Matt, I want to take a quick pause and just recognize a few more people, and then I'm going to switch over to the subject of blockchain. But we have Jean-Marc here, who's joined us from SkyThread. They're actually going to be a guest on the broadcast in a couple of weeks. Thanks for joining, Jean-Marc. And sometimes names don't come through, so LinkedIn user, thanks for listening. I appreciate it. We have Luis Simon, who's joined us. Thanks for joining, Luis. I appreciate you being here. And Steve just was giving you a thumbs up. He was the guy from MD Helicopters, so I'm sure that he likes hearing about some of that. That's good stuff. But hey, Matt, I want to switch over to this topic of blockchain. Now, we've talked a lot about some of the industry challenges and things, and what's the solution to that? All right, well, how does blockchain fit into that? Let's get really down into the details of that. How does that work?
Yeah, sure. So there's a number of problems we have to solve. One of which is around the safe separation of aircraft, and indeed our products such as SimTwin is starting to look at that. But the other point that we really need to solve is how do we support these uncrewed traffic management with data that can be trusted? That's a really key one, because a lot of the traditional ATM systems have evolved over many, many, many decades. And so what happens consistently a lot is, for instance, your airport will have its airport database. The air navigation service provider will have its data. The airline will have its data. And you find that quite often there's a mismatch. And it's because it's evolved patch on patch on patch with safety and regulatory and security properties of these systems. It means it's very, very hard to kind of get off that system and move, because anytime there's a change, you've got the associated cost with that, and it's a refactoring cost, and it hits airlines' bottom line, it hits the airport's bottom line. So what you really want is you want a new model, okay? And I can assure you that this costs the industry thousands, and some of that cost gets rolled onto the consumer. So the industry wants to solve these problems for absolutely sure. And the reason why blockchain can solve it is because it can give the whole supply chain, the whole aerospace aviation supply chain, it can give that single source of truth. Because once you have that blockchain and you have that consensus of parties, which is really what a blockchain is, it means that everybody agrees on that data, and every transaction, everybody agrees what has been sent and what has been received and what is now captured. The question then becomes, okay, but how do I keep my data private if it's supposed to be private? Because if you have a system where the security model is by consensus, that every single person in that community has agreed what that transaction is, how do you then do the data hiding? Well, actually, there's a technological solution for that, and it's called zero knowledge proof. And what zero knowledge proof does is it actually hides the data, but you can effectively still ask properties of that data or confirm properties of that data. So, for instance, I might be able to file a flight plan from, say, Russia through Europe to, say, the UK, for example. And it may well be that basically the passenger details may need to be hidden from, say, certain passenger details need to be hidden from, say, France and Germany en route, but they still need to know where the flight is going. And you can do that through that blockchain technology without having to, so you share what you need to share and don't share what should never be shared, while still having that consensus. And you don't need these bridging agreements then between these root certification authorities. You can just take part in the chain. Okay. And that's the real advantage of blockchain.
Now,
really.
One of the challenges that I see is, mass adoption. And you said, we have to deal with trust and consensus. And so, between different countries. And so, I have a quick question here that came up from Ishmael. He was in Turkey, and he says, is there work on, aerospace regulations for, you could put that, VTOLs or eVTOLs or any kind of vehicle in this space? What knowledge do you have of regulatory activity out there supporting this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, good question. I did notice that question actually in there. So thank you very much, Ishmael, for the question. Yes, indeed, there's a lot of work going on in VTOL, eVTOL aerospace regs, in particular EUROCAE and RTCA, who RTCA basically support the FAA, and EUROCAE, obviously the European regulator, are doing a lot of work on basically type certification. And indeed, TEKTowr, we've been involved in some of that work. We've been certainly talking with the UK CEA. They have an eVTOL safety leadership group, and there's an emerging set of regulations that are coming up. So that there's regulations on the vehicle and how the OEMs need to approach certifying the vehicles themselves. There's also work going on within the various different working groups on the separation standards. And in fact, one of our projects, which I can now talk about actually, is because it's just we've had the comms embargo lifted. A project called Alias is which is going to happen in Jersey, in the ports of Jersey over the Channel Islands, is actually starting to look at the new ACAS separation standards for these aircraft. So this is the regulation which is actually ensuring that these new uncrewed traffic management vehicles, and indeed remote vehicles, can play nicely in the same space as general aviation. So there's indeed a lot of work on the airspace regs, but I can assure you there's a lot of work to go still.
A lot more. Matt, I want to bring up an example I brought up on Friday, because I think it's important that we continue to consider this, is that, we're talking about blockchain, and blockchain covers a lot of areas. It's not only finance, and cryptocurrency and, NFTs and blockchain solutions for business, like what we're talking about here today. But one of the challenges that's happened in the blockchain industry, in the finance world, in the cryptocurrency world, is that, cryptocurrencies, began to proliferate, and they grew faster than what I think people expected. Even though it's been 10 years, all of a sudden they started to grow. And unfortunately, regulatory agencies haven't put in the full, regulatory guidance necessary for that to be as stable as what we need for it to be right now. Okay. And so I'm just grossly characterizing this, and saying the regulations fell behind and the technology moved forward pretty quickly. And all of a sudden we're seeing the technology is there, and we need to hurry up and put regulations in place, and there's problems with guidance, and there's lawsuits being thrown around and things like that. All right. So using that as an example or a model, absolutely, we want to continue to get ahead in this game. And we want to have the regulatory guidance and the certification, standards and everything really moving together with the growth in the technology, so that we can have a smooth movement forward and a growth that can benefit everybody, and not have all of a sudden the reins pulled back on the horse that's running, and say stop
Yeah.
because the road isn't finished ahead. Okay,
Yeah.
you know, so we need to put those regulations in place. So that's my 2 cents worth, you know, at this
Yeah,
point.
absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean that we do occasionally, even in aerospace, and even with the new eVTOLs, we do get a little bit of that. So, for instance, about a couple of months ago, there was a little bit of a knee jerk from the FAA on the eVTOL. They made some concessions to the eVTOL OEMs on their approach to certification, but they actually pulled that back. So I think most of the eVTOL OEMs have actually absorbed that into their programs. But it was slightly concerning for a while, basically, because effectively, in terms of their Part 23, which is the thing you need to file to get the design approval, if you like, the FAA had completely changed their approach, or reverted their approach, I should say, having given some concessions. So it does happen, but I think because aviation and aerospace is used to regulation, even though the new disruptors, if you like, or the new participants to the market, they're starting to get used to this, admittedly, but actually that they are also helping as well. They're helping to drive the regulatory conversation, whether it's a small drone operator all the way through to you know, multi-fleet cargo carrying operation.
Yeah.
You know,
You know, Matt, one of the things that I want to continue to challenge people to do is one of the reasons I'm doing these broadcasts on blockchain and aviation is because we need to know what's happening in the industry. We need to have greater knowledge of the technology and what people are doing what. And as we consider, you know, our business problems we have and what technology can potentially be applied to it, we need to have a greater understanding of that. And where I'm going with this is that industry generally has a greater understanding of the technical and operational challenges than what the regulators do. Okay, and that's not without any disrespect. What that really means is that they're there to help to manage and oversee the situation, and industry brings in the expertise and the knowledge. And so what we need to do in industry is continue to put forth the recommendations that the regulatory agencies need in order to be comfortable that they're providing safe, you know, oversight and guidance. And so for all of you watching out there today, is that, you know, that partnership with regulators is extremely important, because you out there in industry have the knowledge and the regulators have the responsibility to oversee that. And so together we can move forward faster if we're playing together. And like you said, most of them are used to doing that, and we just need to continue to increase that, you know, so that we can have a smooth growth and an acceleration of this part of the industry today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, I wanted to ask you a couple other questions about moving forward. Is that so we've seen some of the challenges. We've seen some of the challenges of you know, regulatory challenges need to be in place. We have, you know, prolific growth. We have trust. We have security. You know, we have all these different things that have to be in place. And you're saying that TEKTowr is working, you know, to solve some of these things. Take me down to the next level on what is TEKTowr doing as a company, you know, either through services or software solutions that's helping enable this part of the industry and move forward using blockchain.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to talk about what our work on Flight to Plan, which was a blockchain, a distributed ledger technology specifically dedicated for aviation. And also I want to talk about our future work with SafeChain, which is a kind of byproduct of that. So I'll go breadth first. So I'll describe both of them first broadly, and then I'll go probably deep on Flight to Plan. So Flight to Plan effectively was a project run by Heathrow Airport as part of the UKRI Future Flight Challenge, and it involved Heathrow Airport, us. There was CETA, who are the Global Aviation Data Exchange people, and there was National Air Traffic Service. There was IAG, who are the airline group, who you know, for instance, British Airways are one of their companies. And then there was Oxford Uni, Cranfield University, and then some SMEs like Rockport Software, IBS, as well as new entrants to the market such as Consortique and Altitude Angel, who are basically, you know, a UTM provider. So we had a large body of organizations, and that was useful because if you're designing a blockchain, you want to have a large body of organizations so you can actually truly model and actually work in a way that's realistic. And TEKTowr were the lead implementation. So we led the implementation of what was the Flight-to-Plan blockchain. And what Flight-to-Plan did is it did a number of things. Effectively, what it would do is it would take flight data, and it would take flight data in a traditional format, but also obeying the new standards that, you know, for instance, the Single European Skies project I mentioned are doing. And it would ensure that you could file a drone flight or an eVTOL flight, one of these new entrants, in exactly the same way as you would file a general aviation, but in a way that was natural to you. So the aim is then, instead of having separate UTM traffic and separate ATM traffic, we could actually effectively bring that together into a single state store, if you like, into a single data store, but where every single member of the community all had the same source of truth and understood it. So you got away from this patch on patch evolution of systems to a unified.
What was the ultimate goal of the study? You know, or of the group, the community that was pulled together. What was their ultimate goal?
Well, the ultimate goal was to show that one, we could integrate UTM with ATM seamlessly with the right safety, the right security. Number two was to show that we could do this using a distributed ledger technology, such that we retained the federated nature of the aviation ecosystem. So,
okay, so what was the outcome then of that?
Well, the outcome was really impressive, actually. We not only were we able to show that we could file these flights in that way, we were able to actually demonstrate drone flights flying during the day in integrated airspace over Heathrow. Never really been done in this particular way. You know, before they'd have to be done through corridors and special procedures, but we were able to show that we could replace those procedures with a very efficient blockchain solution. So that was one outcome. The other thing we were able to show is we were able to show that through zero knowledge proof, we could actually have, you know, multiple geopolitical actors filing their missions. You know, because you can think later on when we start getting uncrewed traffic flying between, say, the UK and France. You know, you need to have something like what we did in place in order to make that happen. You know, otherwise you're back to bridging agreements and we've had
these were simulations that were the outcomes, right?
Well, the Heathrow drone one was real. That wasn't a sim. That was a proper. You know, we actually made that happen.
Okay, all right. Well, then what is the foundation of that work, whether it be simulation or whether it be real? How is that being used going forward now? What's the next step?
So the next step now is, because one of the other things we did with this work was introduce what's called a self-sovereign identity. So the aim is that you can have a digital wallet with your aerospace credentials, if you like. So for instance, if you're a drone pilot, you can have your credentials on your wallet, which says which missions you're allowed to fly, etc. And that then can be verified by, you know, anyone really, by counter UAS, the police, the Civil Aviation Authority, the regulator, whoever it is can verify those credentials without having to go through a single point. You know, it's like having your driving license, etc., but where the issuance of that driving license is well understood by everyone. And so that one of the next steps is that there's a few avenues we need to explore, because we've got that side of it, which is the self-sovereign side, and we're actually now starting to push that and starting to get that, you know, to the point of industrialization, if you like. The other part of it is the flight filing itself. So at the minute, there's a network called the AFTN network, which is still ultimately using copper cable in parts. And the aim is that through the blockchain technology, we can actually start to now conceive of replacing that. So we're now starting to put plans together on how we get rid of the grandfather rights on safety and security for those systems and actually replace it with this modern 21st century distributed architecture.
So you're putting a lot of the base and the foundation in place, you know, for things going forward. So you've pulled together a very elite group of individuals that have, you know, strong operational experience and technical knowledge, and they've come together to look at this challenge and what the solutions are. And you've done some actual implementations and proof of concepts and some simulations, and now you're looking at going forward. Hey, let me just do this. Is that you've given us a tremendous amount of good overview of this whole challenge and what's being done, and it could take us hours to be able to explore it really in depth. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to ask you is that could you just quickly tell people TEKTowr, so you provide services, technical services, and you provide now products. Who should be talking to you about engaging with you going forward? I'm going to give you a chance to plug your company. Who are your customers, and who are you looking to talk to out there about this?
Fantastic, Mark. Thanks for the opportunity, by the way. I don't think I actually said that. So so I would say pretty much there's a few customers. So when you have the type of solutions we do, there are a lot of customers, but I think there's a particular set of customers we're looking for in particular. So I would say anyone that's involved in building aircraft and building these new aircraft, we'd certainly be interested in talking to you, particularly with regards to our safety critical work. And the fact is we take vehicle manufacturers through type certification, and we're able to do that. And we understand what that looks like in terms of safety, security, all of the assurance, hardware and software. So that's one side. And also things like our safe chain, which is going to be a safety critical blockchain compliant to standards like DO178C, where you can actually get this onto the aircraft itself. So we're certainly interested in talking to OEMs. I would also say that we're very, very much interested in talking to people who are looking to provide solutions for aerospace and aviation, and particularly people who are involved with airports, people who are involved with the regulator, air navigation service providers. We are definitely interested in talking to you because we think that we can help accelerate some of your projects and programs that no doubt you've got on. And then also, I'd say the new entrants, so people who are building UTMs, people who are building drone operators. There's loads we can do for you drone operators out there when you suddenly find you want to scale your operation but can't due to safety and due to the controls in your drones themselves and or you've hit a weight payload, and how do you deal with that? We can certainly help with that. Good. So I think that they're examples of customers.
Yeah, Matt, if somebody wants to reach out to you, is LinkedIn okay for them to reach out and connect with you? Or
yeah, absolutely. LinkedIn, yeah, absolutely. Or come check our website out, www.tektowr.com. Drop the last E because at the time we couldn't get the E. Somebody had already got it. So yeah, TEKTowr as spelt here.
Reach out to Matt on LinkedIn. Right there, the name's in front of you, and the company is TEKTowr. And you can go to their website and reach out to them and connect. Hey, Matt, it's been a really good discussion here today, and it's also very exciting to see, just the level of subject matter expertise, that you bring into the industry. And I really like the fact that there's active, groups that are looking at these challenges and this growth, because I really think it's important for us to get out ahead of this and to be able to put in place the regulations and the certification standards and things that we need, to be able to have the growth. I told people this in the last broadcast that we had, is that just a few years ago, I couldn't even imagine that we would have uncrewed vehicles, that we would have electric vehicles, that would move forward as fast as what they've moved forward right now. My thoughts were, navigation, it's not there. Batteries, they don't have the length of capacity, and they're too heavy. And today we see vehicles moving around. We see hybrid vehicles moving around, and the industry is moving very, very rapidly. And it's amazing how quickly it's moved. And so, Matt, congratulations to you and your team for, moving into that field and really contributing your expertise to that, because that's what it takes. It takes the knowledge that we have, giving to the industry to help sort out these challenges and problems so that we can move forward, and be successful in addressing, the industry growth that's necessary in these spaces. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Well, listen, very good. I really appreciate it. Thanks for joining us today. Hey, listen, before I drop off, I just want to tell everybody is we have 3 broadcasts this week. This is the first one on Monday, and I really appreciate the conversation with you, Matt. And on Wednesday, I have a gentleman, Todd Sain, who is actually in Bangkok. And so just to tell you all is that in order to be able to accommodate his live broadcast, I've moved the broadcast 3 hours earlier. And so it's going to actually be, rather than at 1600. It's going to be at 1300 GMT, 8 a.m. Eastern time. And I know for some of you that's too early on the West Coast, and that's okay. We'll have a recording out there, and you'll be able to see that then. But that's with a company called Block Arrow, and they basically have implemented a blockchain platform for asset management and aviation. You're going to want to see that because it's really very interesting. And then on Friday, we have another really interesting guest. It's Nick Scott with a company called ETHjets, and they're actually selling fractional NFTs for business jets. And it's an application of aviation and cryptocurrency and pilotage and jets, and it's just really going to be fun. So it's going to be a really good week. And by the way, I actually have 3 weeks of guest speakers lined up already for the next 3 weeks. I have a few open slots left. I'm talking to people about filling those open slots toward the end of the month. But we're learning a lot about blockchain and aviation, and I'm trying very hard to bring knowledgeable people from the industry, like Matt, to you so that we can really open up these conversations about blockchain and aviation. And most of all, I just really appreciate you as a community watching and participating and being part of this. The 45,000 views that we've had in the last few weeks, really proves that. So Matt, thank you, and your business associates and everybody for joining us and being part of this broadcast today. I appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks all. Good to talk, Mark. And thanks again.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I always close the broadcast by saying fair winds and following seas to you. And I appreciate you all joining the broadcast. Have a great week.